Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get started. Lily Coney, who just walked out, was, of course, one of the co-chairs of the conference, and this panel was her idea. I'd like to thank Lily and Jules for the excellent job that they've done with this, the entire conference, with the high-quality panelists. We hope to continue that with the world-class panelists that we have on this panel. I'm your moderator today. I'm not one of the panelists, not world-class. I'm Chip Pitts from Stanford Law School, and I've also had the honor of being associated in some fashion with most of the organizations that are represented on the panel. I've been active with the ACLU for years, shot into the Rights Defense Committee, have worked with EPIC and with the Brennan Center on various projects. Our topic today is one that sort of expands the focus of CFP beyond the usual focus on computers and technology. We're explicitly going to look at the broader topic of justice. And of course, justice has been defined various ways. It's been defined in Plato's Republic as a way that's explicitly, segmenting society. But our concern here is more the contemporary form of justice, maybe the Rawlsian form, where you're looking at the impact, especially on vulnerable and marginalized groups, so that you have a society that embraces freedom, but as Rawls said, you're planning behind the veil, and you're trying to come up with a society that's fair even for you after you go on the other side of the veil. You want a society that's broadly egalitarian, has principles that protect things like due process and so forth. We're going to look at justice in 4 different contexts really today, 4 or 5. The first one is voting rights, and for that we have Wendy Weiser, who's a real expert in this area from the Brennan Center. She directs the democracy program there. She founded and directed the voting rights program, graduate of Yale Law School, and can speak to a variety of the voting rights issues that interface with technology. We also have Sharon Gooten-Neeson from EPIC. She's the Consumer Rights Counsel there, and she's a Yale undergraduate, Northwestern law grad, clerked with the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights, has a variety of different academic and other clerkship experiences, and has just done a wonderful article on the problems with employer credit checks in the Georgetown Journal of Poverty Law and Policy. I'm hoping that we'll be joined by Johnny Barnes from the local ACLU. I think he's having trouble finding the panel out there, but we hope that he'll show up. He'll be addressing surveillance and civil liberties. He's also very experienced in civil liberties, having had experience as chief of staff to several Congress people on the Hill. He's taught law. He actually was instrumental in the street law program here at the Georgetown Law Center. And of course, he's been a civil rights advocate. He's the male member of the D.C. Commission for Women, for example. And we have Rusella Martinez, who's Director of Policy and Legislative Affairs from the National Immigration Forum. She's a leading advocate on immigration issues, including E-Verify, which we'll probably focus on today. And she's been at the forefront of battles for justice in the immigrants' rights context. Things like the DREAM Act, the Arizona law that's now expanding to other states, Alabama and so forth. I'll just preface this panel by just saying that, as always, technology, being the neutral instrument as it is, can have good or bad application. And we've seen wonderful liberalizing effects of technology, empowerment, economic development that have brought people out of poverty, created all sorts of new economic opportunities for self-determination, for them to express themselves as they read what they want, respect their privacy. But something else that was, if you attended the Middle East and North Africa panel yesterday, Deborah Hurley, speaking of Tunisia, focused on. That's with increased surveillance and the fact that, for example, we've had now more data collected in the last decade than we've had collected in the entire span of human history. It's just happening at an enormous rate, impossible, in fact, for us as humans to conceive. With that enhanced surveillance and data collection come opportunities for control. And this is all about power relationships. Deborah said that Tunisia was the panopticon. It was, she said, an ideal panopticon that allowed the government to gather information on the citizens, control access to jobs, control access to education and health. I mentioned at the panel that I was just in Afghanistan a couple of months ago, and I was absolutely shocked to see that they are creating an even more developed panopticon in Iraq and Afghanistan, with blimps and towers and biometrics, real ID cards for all the citizens, to basically control egress and ingress as you do at, say, Israeli-Palestine checkpoints. It's just remarkable that, this is our nation-building effort in that region. So that's where we're going to if we don't be conscious about the implications of these technologies. And this panel, in its broader perspective on the justice issues, I think, is somewhat new for CFP, but I was really glad to see that Lily had organized it. So I'd like to welcome the panelists today. Since Wendy does have another very important appointment, she's going to be fighting the good fight at another venue in just about an hour. She has to leave early. So I'm going to ask Wendy to go first, and she's going to focus again on voting rights.
Well, thank you very much, Chip, for that introduction, and the conference organizers for putting this together, this wonderful event. I'm going to talk a little bit about voting technology and its effect on privacy and security issues. And as many of you are likely aware, there have been dramatic advances in voting technology in the past decade, and especially in the past 5 or 6 years. And these have had significant civil rights benefits, and they also, as usual, bring some challenges, both for civil rights and privacy. By way of background, in 2002, Congress passed a law called the Help America Vote Act, which was in response to the Florida 2000 election fiasco. And its main accomplishment and purpose was to dramatically upgrade the nation's voting technology in 2 main areas. The first was with respect to the voting machines, and the next was with respect to voter lists. And for better or for worse, Congress provided very little in terms of standards for how to use this technology. And so states and the rest of us have spent the last 6 or 7 years working through the various civil rights and privacy and security issues raised, with some bumps along the road. And I'm going to start with voting machines. This will be a shorter discussion since it has fewer privacy implications. But as a result of this Help America Vote Act, almost all Americans now vote on some form of electronic voting equipment. And this has some significant civil rights and privacy benefits, especially for limited English proficient speakers and for people with disabilities, who now have a much more accessible voting system and now can actually vote securely and independently with the assistance of technology without having to rely on poll workers or their family members or friends. So this has been a significant advance in that respect. And there have been other benefits as well. It's also had some downsides if not properly designed, such as if there are wireless components in your voting machines or if it doesn't have an audit trail, it can be vulnerable to significant security risks. And there are also malfunctions. These are machines. They are operated by poll workers who are not experts with machines. And so every election we hear of malfunctions in certain jurisdictions. And in fact, what was most alarming that the Brennan Center recently documented is that most of the malfunctions we're seeing now previously existed in another jurisdiction. So it's actually the same errors recurring twice, but there's no reporting right now. So voting machines manufacturers are not required to report the problems, so jurisdictions don't know how to fix them. But these are not significant privacy issues. They certainly do have civil rights implications, and people get deprived of their vote when that happens. From a privacy perspective, beyond the benefits that I discussed, there are a few challenges from the voting machines. There have been some concerns raised by some of the paper audit trails that some machines have. If they record the votes in order, some people are concerned that somebody might be able to reconstruct who voted for what, for whom. That's actually a very low risk and would be very difficult to accomplish. But more seriously, there have been some concerns with how some of the machines are used. In New York, for example, in this past election, there was a lot of complaints about the new optical scan voting machines, which are used in about half the country, where voters were voting on paper, but then they had to stand in line with their paper ballots visible to poll workers and everybody else in line before they can insert them into the machine for it to be tabulated. This isn't really a technology issue, it's a polling place management issue, but it is people not understanding how to best use their new technologies. More significant from a civil rights and privacy perspective have been the advances in voter lists. Now, because of HAVA, every state, except for California, which is really late, now has a statewide voter registration database. It is computerized, it has all the voter lists and all the information on every voter that the election officials keep in one place. Previously, these lists were county-based, and they were largely on paper, though some of them had computerized systems. And there are real significant civil rights benefits from these statewide voter registration databases. First, voter information is far less likely to get lost, and that's important. Is if you're not on the voter list, you won't be able to vote a ballot double count, and so you want the information to be able to be found and your name to be found on the list. And there are better records. That's good for voters. You can follow the history of your voter registration. If for some reason it's now missing, you can get it restored. This was actually something that helped us very much in lawsuits where states had improperly removed names from the voter rolls. They can be restored because there are records on the computer. And for the public now, we can get more accurate and detailed data on how the voter registration system is working and where it's going wrong. But there is also a danger from this better data, people over-relying on this data and thinking that it does more than it actually does. And we'll talk about that in a moment. The two other benefits I just want to note, the better lists do foster better mobilization of voters. They help campaigns, and this fosters greater participation. So people can be found more easily by campaigns, and people in their community, they're more likely to show up and vote. And a real significant development that we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years especially is it actually helps register more people to vote through more automated voter registration systems. And so we see a lot of states now, especially at their motor vehicle offices, but now at their social service agencies, electronically transmitting voter registration information to people who want to be registered to vote to the voter rolls. And election officials then review that information and automatically add it on the voter rolls. And there have been dramatic benefits. We did a study of this that actually doubles, at least doubles, but increases as much as up to 7-fold the number of people who get registered to vote in each of these agencies. And there's a dramatic increase in enfranchisement increase. The error rates are dramatically reduced. A study in Maricopa County, Arizona, found that they're actually they're reduced by a factor of 5. Typos and translating paper, it creates a lot of errors, which in turn disenfranchise people. And it saves millions of dollars. It's an extraordinary cost savings. So this has been a real benefit with the technology.